This has Winnipeg Jets fans absolutely fired up. And following another fantastic win, this time against the Detroit Red Wings, we have a lot to talk about, specifically surrounding the Winnipeg Jets defensemen. They are playing out of their mind, and Jets fans have been waiting for this for a very long time. So break that down and much more on this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you who are watching this video aren't subscribed, and you enjoy daily NHL content or daily Winnipeg Jets content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. But Darius, the Winnipeg Jets obviously took their first loss of the season a few days ago against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then they bounced back. And that was the biggest question, how they were going to respond to their first loss of the year. They didn't play great. A lot of their defensemen, Neil Pionk, Dylan Sandberg, played very poorly. And they came out and they responded in pretty big fashion against the Detroit Red Wings, winning by a score of 6-2. And there's a lot to go over here. And the biggest thing is just the defense core. They're almost making history. They're doing some crazy things. You can see this here. Defense and points leaders through October 30th, 2024. You obviously have Cale Makar, number one. He's always going to be in that spot. But you have 2 out of the 5 defenseman point leaders through October on this list are a part of the Winnipeg Jets. Neil Pionk with a phenomenal game yesterday against the Red Wings. And, of course, Josh Morrissey, who is one of the better defensemen in the league. Darius, it's great to see that the Jets got the win after their first loss of the year. They responded very, very well, and it's on the back of their defense.
Yeah, if you asked me, at the start of the season, who would be leading the league in scoring in terms of defensemen in the top 5, top 10 on November 1st, I'm not sure a lot of these names would be on the list. Maybe Josh Morrissey, but Neil Pionk second behind Cale Makar in points for defensemen. I mean, it's a great start to the season for Neil Pionk. And, in one of our previous videos, Nick, we took a look at the advanced analytics for that game where they lost against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The only bad game of the season, really, for the Winnipeg Jets at this point, 9-1 on the season. And, I mean, he was not great. Him and Dylan Sandberg, that pairing was not good. But a huge bounce back in the game, and we'll get to it in a second against Detroit, like you mentioned. But the defense is, in a way, a lot of people might be like, what is this guy talking about? But in a way, carrying the Winnipeg Jets because they're the highest scoring offense from the defense in the National Hockey League. So if this continues, they're going to be, at least they're on pace right now, the highest scoring D-core in the National Hockey League. So pretty good company. And as you can see here again, Josh Morrissey there in 4th place and Neil Pionk. So really good company for 2 of those players on the Winnipeg Jets. And if you look at the last 5 games, we'll focus in on Neil Pionk for a second. If you look at his game charts, and especially the last 5 games, except for the Toronto one, of course, pretty good. He's had a great season. He's put together a very good season so far. So I don't know, Nick, what you're seeing from Neil Pionk specifically, but he's had a great season besides one game, and you're going to have stinkers sometimes to start the season.
Yeah, and that was a game where almost every Winnipeg Jets defenseman didn't play very good at all. And we looked at the impact chart for that game, and it was pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, you see it here, 2 goals in the game against the Detroit Red Wings. He had a 4-point night back against the San Jose Sharks. You remember that one pretty clearly. Like, he's always been like this since he's been acquired from the New York Rangers in that Jacob Trouba trade way back a few years ago. He's been a guy who's always put up points. He's always been a great puck-moving defenseman. The question was how his defensive game would be, and it's been playing out pretty well. Again, the Jets were one of the best teams defensively in the league last year. They have one of the best goalies in the league last year. And the only question was, and you mentioned how the defense is carrying the team this year. Yeah, like they have Kyle Connor putting up unbelievable numbers. I think he's at 9 goals, 8 assists now. They have all the firepower, and that's why they're the best team in the NHL. But it's the defense that they were wondering whether or not the defense could be sustained from last season. And again, they lost Brendan Dillon. That was probably the biggest defenseman that they lost. But I mean, everyone else has stepped up in their absence, whether that's Neil Pionk, whether that is Josh Morrissey, or even the other guys like you mentioned, Dylan Sandberg. So many guys have been playing really, really well that when you have Connor Hellebuck in net and you have a great defense in front of you, they're not going to have many stinker games. They did have one against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were due for one, and they bounced back and absolutely dominated the whole way through against the Detroit Red Wings. And it's ultimately, I think that's what they're going to continue to do to teams who are not ready for what the Winnipeg Jets have to offer, because it's not going to be easy to squeak goals in against Connor Hellebuck, let alone if you have one of the best defenses in the NHL that is also putting up crazy amount of points.
That's exactly it, right? Like if you have Connor Hellebuck in net, it's going to be hard to score against this team. And then on top of, Kyle Connor scoring at the clip that he's scoring at right now, and obviously everyone chipping in offensively, the defense core, they have the best offense from their defense as well. And they're not just doing it like on special teams, right? They're doing it 5-on-5 as well. They're putting up a lot of points. So we can get into the game against Detroit specifically because obviously that was their last game. And the chart looks very different than the one against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like you mentioned, at some point you're going to have a stinker when you start a season 8-0, right? It's coming. You're going to lose games over the course of a season. But I think the best thing for the team, and not only the team but the fan base, to make sure everything's still nice and going smoothly, is to bounce back and have a really good game against Detroit. And they did exactly that, right? The negative impact very minimal in this game. Everybody had a very good game, and leading the way there, as you can see, is the man of the hour that we are talking about. So really good from the defense core all season long. And as you can see here, I want to get your thoughts on Scott Arniel as well, because obviously him coming in as coach, not a brand new face to the organization or the team, but it looks like he has continued what they kind of built with Rick Bowness behind the bench as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Rick had a great time with the Winnipeg Jets. They changed the structure once he joined after Paul Maurice left and joined Florida. And then Scott Arniel, he was one of the guys the fans, I mentioned this in previous videos, wasn't super excited about because they wanted a new face. They wanted to hire a guy who was outside of the Winnipeg Jets' current coaching structure because he was the assistant coach for Rick Bowness. But now, I mean, fans have kind of fallen in love with what he's done so far. And you can see here, Scott Arniel offered the Jets a chance at redemption. They didn't waste any time rewarding his faith. Shout out to Kyle Connor as well for the 500-point milestone. But, I mean, the players seem to love him. Again, they've already had the relationship there, so clearly that was playing a factor. And it's not like Rick was a bad coach. He was a great coach. It started to tail off towards the end. He would refuse last season at times in the playoffs to make line changes. They would leave certain lines out there too long, whether it was the Scheifele line. We all remember that last year. But ultimately, like I mentioned before, Scott Arniel now is bringing some more of the modern, I guess, structure for this team, something Rick Bowness wasn't really willing to do. And he's also combining that with what Rick Bowness left with the Winnipeg Jets, which was the grit, which was obviously just playing hard, and of course, a lot of the other intangibles that this team took with them. And again, the D group scoring is crazy. I mean, if you told me Connor Miller was going to have 2 goals through 9 games coming into the season, I'd be very, very surprised. Or that he'd have more goals than Josh Morrissey. Dylan Sandberg having as many goals this year, or almost as many goals as he did last year and the past 2 seasons combined. So it's all going well, and it's about how they bounce back, and they bounce back really well, and they just have to keep going because they could have let that loss against the Leafs get to them. I mean, most teams wouldn't when you were 8-0. A loss was bound to happen, but they took care of it. But they had to do it against the good teams as well because the Leafs are a good team. They beat a lot of good teams so far, Edmonton Oilers included. You got to get it going though.
Yeah, they have to continue on this hot streak. And I mean, when Rick Bowness was coach, as you can see, I think this tweet is very interesting, and kind of what you brought up as well, that Scott Arniel hasn't really erased anything that was happening before, right? He's still adopted that, but he's bringing in new and fresh ideas since he is the bench boss now, right? And some more modern things, which I think is good for Jets fans as well. And obviously the team, because they are on pace right now, at least the defensive core, for 65 goals over the course of the season. That's not bad. I think they're going to lead the league in that category if they continue on this pace. And like you said as well, they could have let that game get to them, but they didn't, right? And I think there's something to be said about that. And they are 9-1-0 on the season, obviously heading into their next game. And I think everyone in Winnipeg is feeling good about this team for sure. They just want to see if they're going to be able to take that next step in the playoffs, because again, disappointing end to the season last year, but the way they've started this year, they look like they're a team on a mission, honestly. Like they look like they're trying to, handle the small things, and obviously very attention to detail in their game. So if they continue to win like this and play like they're winning, or play like this, they're going to win a lot of games this season, and it could turn out pretty good for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, and ultimately, if they keep up this pace, I have a lot of faith in them going forward, and especially into the playoffs. Just gonna have to see if Connor Hellebuck is able to, and the defense, because they also let him down last postseason. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Let us know if you're enjoying the Winnipeg Jets content. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you later.